Regarding arguments, we have some types of arguments which you should know. The first important type are the positional or required arguments. That is the compulsory arguments which we saw just now. A, comma, B, comma, C. All these things are called as positional arguments that are also called as required. Why do you require? You cannot skip that. Let me show you this example. Sum of x comma y. If I remove this y from here and run this program, it says missing one required positional argument. What do you mean by positional argument? These are compulsory arguments. A comma B. A value must be passed without fail. If you skip the value, it will cause an error. That's why they are called as positional arguments. Positional arguments are the arguments which must be passed while calling the function. Right? The arguments that are mandatory and are passed in the given order. You have to give in the correct order. A, B, C, D. That respective values should be given in the same order. Are called positional or required arguments. So when it comes def sum of A, B, C, D, you have to give 4 values. You cannot skip any one of these. Why? Because they are compulsory or positional arguments, otherwise called as required arguments. The next kind of arguments which can be used in a function, they are called as default arguments. What are default arguments? Say for example, you do a particular program where the user is given an option where they can skip the C, D values. A, B values are compulsory, C, D are not compulsory. So if the user skips C, D option, the default value is assigned as 10, 5. Okay, these arguments can be skipped during a function call. In that case, the default value is assigned for a variable. I will show you an example. See, sum of 5, 7. So what happens during the function call? 5 is assigned to A, 7 is assigned to B. Now I have skipped C and D. Why? Because they are default arguments. You have the option to skip them. But what happens to C and D? This value will be taken by default. That's why they are called as default values. Then keyword or named arguments. I will show you first. Let me explain you with an example and then tell you what are keyword arguments. Now, let me give a new example of simple interest program. Say def simple interest P, R, T, principal, rate of interest, term, where I will declare the term as 5 years. Say if the user does not enter the term, I will take it as 5 years. Now, I will return the answer. What is the formula? PRT by 100. This is simple interest formula. Now, I will ask the user to enter the principal, int of input, then rate of interest, which is again, say I'll consider it as integer. Then call the function print simple interest of P, R. I simply close the function call. Why? Because I'm not giving any term answer now. A second time I will call the same function with values, 2 years. So I'm going to give 2 years. So what happens in this case and what happens in this case? In this place, I'm calling the simple interest program by passing values for the positional arguments. What are positional arguments? P and R are positional arguments. So compulsorily you have to give the values. But what happened to default? I have skipped that. So first time PR is taken what I give and T is taken as 5. But in this line, PR is taken as what I gave them and 2 is passed to T instead of 5. If you give the value, that value will be considered. If you don't give the value, the default value is considered. Now let us run this program and check the answer. So first I'll give 1000 rupees as the or 10,000 rupees as the principal, then 10% interest. See, 5000 is the first function. first function call where I gave 5 as the default value. So it gave 5000 as the simple interest. The second one I have passed 2 as the value. So it is given answer 2000 as the interest. So this is how a default variable is used. So if a default value is skipped, no problem. If you have not skipped, this value will be taken instead of default value. So this P and R cannot be skipped. Why? Because they are positional arguments. Now, let us see, I will consider principal as 5000, rate of interest as say 5% and the term as 3 years. Now, what will happen? Let me remove everything. So, what will happen for the first time when I call simple interest? The interest is calculated for 5000 rupees, 5% and for 3 years. Let us check if it happens. So first it asks for a value because I have given an input statement. So first time it is calculated for the given values. First time it calculates for the default values because I didn't pass. Second time it is calculated for PR and T is given as 2. Now I want to execute this program by skipping this P and R. Only T value I should pass. If I simply give say the term 10 years, I want to find the simple interest for 10 years of term. But the principal and interest I want to use the default value. Now when you pass a number 10, what will happen? This 10 will be considered for the first variable. But whereas I want to pass this 10 as the value for T and skip these two. In that case, I am forced to mention for which argument I am giving this 10. So I will say T is equal to 10. So what happens here when I call the simple interest function? P value is taken as 5000, R value is taken as 5, T value is alone given as 10. So when I call a function, when I mention a value for a variable along with its name, that is called as a named argument or keyword argument. When you call a function, passing a value along with its name by mentioning its name is called as a keyword argument. You can also pass another value here. Say R is equal to 2%. You can also change the order. Why? Because I have clearly mentioned what variable I am giving the value. So you also have the choice of changing the order while using keyword arguments. Okay. So T value I have given, it will be passed to this place. R value I have given, it will be passed to this place. I have skipped P. So P is taken as the default, which is 5000. So this is how the program gets executed. Okay. I hope you understood the kinds of arguments. So generally the order of arguments should be the same as parameters. In case we want to change the order of passing arguments or to pass only selected default variables, we can pass the values by mentioning the names. This is what we saw just now. So these kind of arguments are keyword or named arguments. Next. While declaring a combination of positional arguments and default arguments, you have a rule stating that the positional argument should be given in the left side and the default arguments should be given in the right side. So this is the correct way of mentioning. Suppose you want to give default values for A and B should be given in the right hand side. So whatever is the default should come in the right side, compulsory should come in the left side. So this is correct. Look at the second one. This is also correct. Why? A is positional argument. B, C, D are default argument. So this is correct. But look at this. In this case, A, B default arguments are given in the left side. This is wrong. Actually, this should be given as def sum of C, D, A equal to 10, B equal to 5. So in the next video, you will learn about the scope of variables.